What's going on, everybody? I'm here with another good one for you today, another gear review, and today we are talking about this bad boy right here, the Nightforce NX8 4 to 32 by 50. Now, Nightforce has an incredible reputation, but it also comes with a super steep price tag. This one right here, gonna run you about $2,200 depending on what website you find it on and if it's on sale. But the big thing we need to figure out is if this stands up to that price tag. Now, I'm always looking to learn new things, so I'm guessing you are here because you were considering purchasing this scope. So what I wanna know is what scope you're coming from and why you're looking at ditching it. So jump on down to the comments, let me know. But now let's jump into the review of this rifle scope and see if it's really gonna stack up to what you want it to do. Now, the Nightforce NX8, pretty good in their line of glass, all right? I think it probably falls right below the ATACR. Comes in a couple of different options, but like I said, this one right here, the 4 to 32 by 50. You can get it in 2 different colors, 2 different focal planes, 6 different reticles, got a ton of different options to kind of pick the exact one that's gonna fit what you are looking for. So I'm looking for 3 things out of my rifle scopes. I'm looking for a good build quality, decent glass quality, and durability, all right? As long as it checks all those boxes, it's gonna be a winner in my books. Now, this rifle right here is a Bergara 6.5 PRC. Obviously, I've done quite a bit of customization to it, but big thing for you, 6.5 PRC, all right? It's probably lower end of average in the recoil range you're gonna be looking at for a hunting round, and it's definitely gonna be higher than probably what you're looking at for a PRS round. So that gives you an idea of the recoil that this bad boy has had to withstand. Not a crazy amount, but gives you a good idea of what you're working with. I've had this bad boy for about 6 months, put a ton of rounds through it, and I'll let you know how I think it stacks up. So let's talk about build quality. It's about 14 inches long, just over 28 ounces, all right? So it's not the smallest rifle scope in the game, but I think it's a pretty good mid-range if you're looking for something that's a little bit more packable for hunting. They definitely make heavier ones, Vortex razors, stuff like that. It's definitely ones that are gonna run you over 30 ounces. So this isn't terrible. Probably, like I said, a little bit higher end of average. And we're just gonna work from front of the scope and kind of work our way back. Comes with Tenebrex scopes caps on both ends, protects your glass, nice positive clicks. The only thing I didn't like is this one kept flipping open during a hunting trip. Is what it is, just had to pay attention to it, make sure my objective lens didn't get all scratched up. Moving backwards, you kind of don't have a ton of room to mount your scope. These are Warren rings. They've done a really good job for me. Decent quality rings. You just don't have a lot of room to shift back and forth. All right, this was kind of where I eventually found that I liked it, but because of the way this scope is built, it just did not seem to have as much forgiveness in the mounting options as I kind of wish it did. So now let's talk about one of the big things that everybody cares about, and that's turrets, all right? As you can see, capped windage, all right? I like that. I hold for most of my wind, especially in matches, definitely in hunting. So having that, just knowing that it's gonna be on 0 every time, it didn't get bumped, anything like that. I love scopes that do that. Now, for both your windage and elevation, all right, the clicks on the turrets, they're crisp. I don't have a lot of concerns. I could do it blindfolded if I needed to, all right? The numbers are big, they're easy to read. I have no complaints about these turrets. The only thing I didn't love that is, I guess, turret related is once you zero your rifle, taking it back to 0, you gotta just do it via some hex screws, drop it back on, tighten it down. I didn't love it. I didn't feel like it was maybe the most secure way of doing it, but haven't had any issues. So just take that for what it's worth. Now, on the other side of the rifle is gonna be your parallax adjustment knob and how you activate the illumination for the reticle. Now we'll touch on the parallax adjustment knob first. It's stiff, but not so stiff that you gotta fight with it. I think it's just about perfect. Nightforce did a really good job with this chunk of the scope right here. Like I said, it's stiff, but it holds right where it should and you don't gotta fight with it. In my opinion, it's the perfect level of tension. Now, for your illumination, it's just a push button in. Now there's no tactile or audible click when you push in. You just gotta push until it hits and then you let it go, okay? I don't know that I loved that portion, but it's worked every time, and that is sometimes the issue with illuminated scopes is that the button starts to wear out and then, well, you might as well just not even have an illuminated scope, or you gotta send it back for warranty. So while I wish I would have redesigned that a little bit different, I have no real complaints on it. It works exactly as intended. Just in a perfect world, I would like something a little bit more tactile or audible. Now moving back to your magnification adjustment, again, 4 to 32, that's what the NX8 portion means. The 8 means that it's gonna have a multiple of 8 on your lowest magnification. Most scopes run somewhere to 3 to 6, so this gives you a huge window to work with, depending on what your comfort level is and how far you wanna reach out. It's a really useful tool to have, in my opinion. And again, I think perfect tension, all right? You don't fight with it, you don't struggle with it, but when you get it somewhere, it holds. Once you get it where you want it, you just kind of set it, forget it, all right? Unless something bumps the included throw lever, which does screw right out, in case you didn't want to use it and risk it being bumped, you just kind of leave it and then you're good to go. It's stiff, but not so stiff that you're fighting with it. This throw lever does come loose quite a bit. That was the one complaint I had about the build quality, is that this bad boy, not super long on the threads, and it seemed to rattle loose quite a bit in the side-by-side. Now, one last thing I'll mention about these screw and Tenebrex scope covers is they do rotate both ends. So if for whatever reason you want them to open a different way, you can do that. It's very customizable. Now, the final thing I guess we'll throw into build quality is the reticle. All right, this has a Mill XT. It's kind of your classic Christmas tree shape that you think of. Reticles are a very, very personal thing. You really got to find what one you like, all right? I use this again for PRS as well. So having a Christmas tree that kind of helps me with my holds at various distances, helpful to me. If I was just using it for hunting, I'd probably look at something like the Mill C. The simplicity of just hash marks up and down your crosshairs makes it a lot easier to use for hunting. Now, one last thing on this reticle, again, huge magnification range. So I found that the reticle itself, the actual Christmas tree portion, not super usable below about 8 power, all right? You can still see the nice fine crosshair portion, no issues. So if you don't need to do any holds, you can still probably hold right there at 4 power and send it. But if you're trying to do any sort of holds or anything like that, you probably gotta dial it up a little bit just so that it's not quite as fine and it's a little bit more usable to you. Now let's talk about glass quality. And this is where things start to go a little bit downhill for me. I don't need my scopes to be crazy, crazy clear. They're not observation devices, they're aiming devices. So I just need them to be clear enough to see what I'm doing. But this is still a $2,200 scope, and I think there is a ton of scopes at a lower price point that have much better glass. That's an exaggeration. Not much better, but still better glass. And for me, the big thing is better light transmission. This does fine in matches in the middle of the day, but I found I was giving up a little bit of light at last light for hunting and first light, which is really when this needs to perform. Now, I will say some of that probably to do with the fact that it dials way up there to that 32, but even at some of the lower magnifications, the glass still didn't wow me. And even in bright daylight, when I dialed it up all the way to the 32, the glass got a little bit hazy. It just didn't seem to be super sharp. I think the glass is okay. I'll give it okay. Wasn't wowed by it, didn't hate it. Wouldn't be a reason I get rid of the scope or don't consider it. Just know going in, the glass isn't crazy amazing. Now let's talk about durability. And this was the most shocking thing to me. I bought a Nightforce because I had a Vortex that throughout the course of the season bounced like 0.2 of a mil out. Nothing crazy, just not something I wanted to have happen, especially at some longer ranges. So I bought this bad boy, threw it on my rifle, got it all zeroed, put the rounds through it, no issues with it. Took it on a deer hunt here in Arizona. The first several days, even checking it for zero, worked great. Now I say that to let you guys know that I don't suck at shooting. I'm not the greatest by any means, but I can hold my own for the most part. So the next day, found a deer, 650. It's a shot I've made a ton of times on a ton of different steel. Wind was good. Actually, there was no wind, which was awesome. But at 650, this bad boy was 1.7 mils high. Now, before you ask, yes, we double checked the range with a different rangefinder, and we also ran the ballistics through a couple of different apps. Came up with the same thing every time. It was dialed correctly, the hold was good, the squeeze was good, everything like that, and very, very consistently, this bad boy had bounced 1.7 mils out. Even once I got home and took it back out, still 1.7 mils out. Now obviously that's not what you want to see happen with this thing, all right? But I do throw in the caveat, it is still equipment. Guys, no matter how much money you spend on it, it can still break, all right? Nightforce has the reputation of being bomb-proof for a reason. I don't know if I just got a bad one, if I got a lemon, it's gonna go back to Nightforce for them to figure out. But it is something that's concerning to me, and man, I missed a nice deer. It's probably gonna be something that ruins this scope for me. I don't know that I will ever trust it again, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It's probably just a one-off, but it's still worth noting for you guys. Now, before you guys jump in the comments and roast me, I can tell you, scope is mounted correctly, correct torque, set up exactly the way Nightforce recommends. There were no falls, no impacts, anything like that on it throughout my trip. What I think probably happened was it was stored in a padded case and it probably just shifted in the padding and probably, bam, right on the turret. You would hope in a padded case in a confined area that small of a shift and probably that light of an impact would not do anything to this, but still did, and it kind of soured this scope for me. So, is this scope worth $2,200? Well, not for me, all right? It didn't do what it was supposed to do in the moment of truth, which is the entire reason I purchased it. Now, that doesn't mean Nightforce NX8s suck. It really doesn't. I think I may have just got a bad one. This is adored by a lot of people online. I read a ton of reviews before I went with it. I think I just had a bad experience. But again, it is worth noting for you guys that it did happen. So there you guys have it. My thoughts on the Nightforce NX8 4-32 by 50. It's a good scope. Definitely higher end. This particular one on this rifle, not worth the $2,200 price tag to me though. If you guys got something out of this, please do me a favor, jump on down, hit that subscribe button. We'll do a ton of more gear reviews. Maybe you guys can learn a few things. But until next time, I'm Matt with Deer and Donuts. Goodbye.